You know, Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime that just does not have a sense of humor, and he absolutely lacks the ability to laugh at his own self. His ego is so fragile that if anyone does an impersonation of him, he calls it horrible and terrible, and he just falls apart at the seams if someone cracks a joke at his expense. The entire time he was in office, he was always talking about horrible Alec Baldwin. He's terrible. He should be canceled. I don't ever recall a president in my lifetime getting upset over who was impersonating them on SNL. I don't ever recall Bill Clinton going off on rants about Phil Hartman, but Donald Trump was the first one that did that. He just didn't have the ability to laugh at himself, and he took impersonations as insults. Even George W. Bush had a sense of humor about things like this. I don't know if you guys remember this White House Correspondents Dinner, but it was hilarious when George W. Bush invited the impersonator to stand alongside him and go back and forth. Take a look at this.
Members of the White House Correspondents Association, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen.
Here I am.
I'm absolutely delighted to be here. As is Laura.
She's hot.
As you know, I always look forward to these dinners.
It's just a bunch of media types. Hollywood liberals, Democrats like Joe Biden. How come I can't have dinner with the 36% of the people who like me?
It's good to see so many influential guests here tonight. Justice Scalia, Justice Alito.
Yeah, all the usual suspects. Speaking of suspects, where's the great white hunter?
I am sorry Vice President Cheney couldn't be here tonight. So I want to talk about some serious issues, such as...
Okay. Here it comes. Nuclear proliferation. Nuclear proliferation. Nuclear proliferation.
Nuclear proliferation. Ladies and gentlemen, that ruggedly good-looking guy right there is Steve Bridges. He's a fine talent. In fact, Steve did all my debates with Senator Kerry.
So Alec Baldwin never got that invite from Donald Trump to come to the White House and stand up there and crack jokes with him. Instead, Donald Trump was always calling for SNL to be canceled and talking about how horrible that Alec Baldwin was. And he's really upset at the most recent White House Correspondents Dinner because jokes got made at his expense and his ego is so fragile, he just can't stand it. He had this to say: the White House Correspondents Dinner was really bad. Colin Jost bombed and Crooked Joe was an absolute disaster. Doesn't get much worse than this. You know, for the party that always accuses the other side of being a snowflake, Donald Trump is the king of all snowflakes. The guy cannot stand to have a joke made at his expense, and he cannot laugh at himself. But fortunately now, we have a president, Joe Biden, who can laugh at himself and did a good job at it. Check this out.
It's been a year since I delivered this speech, and my wife Jill was with me tonight, was worried how I do. I told her, don't worry, just like riding a bike. She said, that's what I'm worried about. I feel great. I really feel great. I'm campaigning all over the country. Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina. I've always done well in the original 13 colonies. And speaking of history, did you hear what Donald just said about the major Civil War battle? Quote, Gettysburg, wow. Trump's speech was so embarrassing, the statue of Robert E. Lee surrendered again. But look, age is the only thing we have in common. My vice president actually endorses me.
So back when I was growing up, me and my grandmother, who I called Nana, and she's who gave me the nickname Brando because her favorite actor was Marlon Brando, we used to watch the old school comedic roast together. And Nana loved to watch a good roast, and she enjoyed that comedy better than anything. And she loved to roast other people, and she also loved when you gave it back to her. That was just her sense of humor. And so growing up, it was pretty commonplace in our house to do it. And there was never any punching down, and there was never any hurtful things said. It was all in good fun, and no one got their feelings hurt. No one was a snowflake. No one got offended. None of those things that the right accuses us of doing. And by the way, me and my Nana both were progressive-leaning people, and we laughed and joked at each other's expense all the time. But the deal with those old-school comedic roasts is, yes, you would have someone like Don Rickles get up and just roast Frank Sinatra. He would just lay into him and just absolutely roast him. But it was all in good fun, and he would close by talking about how great Frank Sinatra was and how much he loved him, and they would shake hands and they would hug and they would move on. And that's what these White House Correspondents Dinners have turned into. Yeah, you know, Colin Jost got up and he roasted Joe Biden too. Check it out.
Like many of you here tonight, I pretend to do news on TV. My Weekend Update co-anchor, Michael Che, was going to join me here tonight, but in solidarity with President Biden, I decided to lose all my black support.
So he made jokes at Joe Biden's expense, and Joe Biden laughed about it. And when it was all over, Colin Jost had this to say about Joe Biden.
He voted for you, and the reason that he voted for you is because you're a decent man. My grandpa voted for decency, and decency is why we're all here tonight. Decency is how we're able to be here tonight. Decency is how we're able to make jokes about each other and one of us doesn't go to prison after. We go to the Newsmax after party. And when you look at the levels of freedom throughout history and even around the world today, this is the exception. This freedom is incredibly rare, and the journalists in this room help protect that freedom, and we cannot ever take that for granted. So, Mr. President, I thank you for your decency on behalf of my grandfather, and I thank all of you, almost all of you, for your decency as well.
So that's what a good comedic roast is all about. You make jokes with each other, but you know at the end of the day that you respect each other and you walk away and no one's offended. But Donald Trump does not have the ability to do that. And Donald Trump's sense of humor is not a sense of humor at all. People find humor in the fact that Donald Trump is cruel. And people find humor in the fact that Donald Trump is a bully. And I debated on whether I wanted to go dig up all the old clips of him punching down, and I decided not to because, folks, we all know we saw him till we're sick of seeing him. But we saw him mock a handicapped reporter. We saw him mock John McCain more than once. We have saw him, make fun of Chris Christie for his weight. We saw him make fun of Joe Biden for dementia. We saw him make jokes about Hunter Biden and his drug addiction. Donald Trump's humor is cruelty, and it's punching down, and people find humor in that. And that's why he can't stand to have it gave back to him, because he's a bully. My grandmother, on the other hand, if she came at me roasting me, I could give it back to my grandmother and we would both have a good gut laugh about it, because we both knew that we loved each other and we weren't being cruel to one another and we weren't punching down. But when you're being cruel and you're punching down and somebody starts giving it back to you, then suddenly you've got a problem. Suddenly you're mad now, because how dare you stand up to me? No bully can stand to be bullied back. No bully can stand to have you get in their face. I have people all the time say, Brando, should you really be trolling Trump supporters the way that you do? Yes. I should mock and ridicule the fuck out of them. Why? Because that's the only language they speak and understand. I know there's people that will say, well, when they go low, we go high. They don't have the ability to go high. The bottom is all they know. The bottom is the only thing they understand. And we can sit back here and we can point to our charts and our graphs and our facts and our evidence, and we can be as respectful as we can all day long. And they're just going to get louder with their cruelty. They're just going to get louder with their rhetoric because they've already been trained and brainwashed into believing that any facts and evidence that we present is fake news. The only thing they hear is when you give it back to them. So that's why I write the satirical songs. That's why I troll them. That's why, I take those swings, because you have to get their attention somehow. And we've sure as hell tried with facts and evidence and logic and reason, but they're so cruel and so mean-spirited it don't get through. And nobody likes a wimp. I mean, I'm sorry. If you stand back and you just quietly try to be meek and I know it may be the right thing to do. But no, right now more than ever, we need to continue to lay into them and let them have it and give it back to them, because we can make jokes amongst ourselves and know that it's in good fun. We can make jokes amongst ourselves and know that we love and respect one another at the end of the day. They're not doing that. It's not about love and respect to them. It's about cruelty. And that right there needs to be ridiculed and called out every chance you get.